What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Vanguard. We're going to be joined once again today by special guest Ron Placone, good friend of the show. But how you doing, Zach?
Doing awesome, doing awesome. Great weather in Kansas City, as we always say, makes the show infinitely better when it's not miserable outside. The like heating and cooling control in our little Vanguard studio that we have, it ebbs and flows with the seasons for sure. So for the last like months and months and months, it's been like 10 million degrees in the studio every time. Gavin and I are sweating our balls off up here, drinking hot coffee and fucking, but now it's perfectly temperate. It's actually like 72 degrees in here, which is like wild. I don't need a coat or anything like that. So yeah, it's super awesome. Super excited to talk to a good friend of the show, Ron. Excited to hear how his show went yesterday. I know he had a one-man show on Lucy and the Satirist. So excited to talk with him about that, his antitrust summer, and then, of course, the regular news.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to get Ron in here as always. And yeah, it's absolutely beautiful here in Kansas City. Really, truly starting to feel like fall. So no complaints from me. Yeah, and what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you're just tuning in for the first time. Make sure to hit that subscribe. Make sure to hit that like if you haven't already. Really helps beat the algorithm. We're up against that. So, good way to show some support. Speaking of good ways to show some support, we do like to start our live streams with a big old shout out to the patrons. Thank you guys so much for the support on Patreon. Really, really helps us out here at the Vanguard. If you're interested in joining our patron, the link's in the description. I don't know what you're talking about, Xena. Did you forget to premiere? I don't know what you're talking about premiering. So let me know. But anyway, huge shout out to the patrons. Like I said, wouldn't be able to do the show without you guys. Really good way to support us. We're 100% independent and viewer funded. So hit up the link in the description if you're interested in keeping us afloat. But yeah, anything else to say, Zach, before we get the man of the hour in here?
No, let's go ahead and get our news on with Ron.
Hell yeah. Well, without further ado, what's up, Ron Placone?
What's up, fellas? Good to see ya. Happy Sunday. Thanks for having me. Glad the weather is a lovely Midwest autumn in Kansas City. That's my favorite time of year. And I mean, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I'm a Midwest guy, and yeah, the Midwest fall is a very, very special thing. It doesn't happen as often these days. I feel like sometimes it just goes straight from summer to winter. But
yeah.
But yeah,
Gavin and I have talked about that. That's one of the things that really anchors us to this part of the country, right? Obviously we're more, I mean, I don't have like a ton of interest in like, being in a huge city. But the other big thing is just the fact that if I move to, San Diego or Los Angeles or something like that, I wouldn't, or even downtown New York City, like, you'd have to drive quite a ways to be able to experience the like leaf change, the nice weather. And I'm a big seasons guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm Midwestern to a fault, right? So I will constantly bitch and moan about every season we're in until that season leaves. And then I'll oh my God, now it's too cold. I just wish it was summer again.
I want to go sled riding, but it's July.
Except for autumn, though. That's the one season that I always wish it never ended. I wish like I could move somewhere where it's always fall, because I just love the vibe so much. That
I feel like the Northwest is the closest you can get. Although these days, even that's not really the case, because like they get heat waves now. But when I lived in Seattle, that was kind of like how I described the weather to people. I was like, it's sort of like fall all year, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it does get kind of cold though after that, like hella cold. So, but I guess it does in Kansas City too. By the way, shout out to you, Venetia David, for the $5. Yay! Thanks, guys. Ron is my favorite guest. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Venetia. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. First super chat of the live stream. Thank you so much, Venetia. Really appreciate that. And yeah, Ron's one of our favorite guests as well. Always a pleasure chatting with you. And how was your performance? You were at the Rin Fest, right?
Well, no, I just did my own. I just did my own show. But yeah, I did a premiere of a new show that I just wrote called. It's a historic interpretation of Lucian the Satirist, who was a writer. Who was born around 125 AD. He was basically a comedic writer before there ever was such an official designation, and he toured around the world at the time. He would give lectures in Rome and Athens, and he wound up in Egypt at the end because he was actually no hero at the end of the day. But I go into all that in the show. But yeah, so I did a historical interpretation of him where I took some of his work and then like revamped it for modern language. And I did it yesterday in my neighborhood in San Pedro at this venue called the Corner Store. They have a little outdoor patio, so I just kind of did it at 2 p.m. And people showed up, which was pretty cool. And I taped it, and now I'm going to send it to Ren fairs all over the country to try to do some Ren fairs next year. I'm going to start with regional ones, around where I live in like the SoCal area. And there's the big official Los Angeles one. I put Los Angeles in quotes because it's not technically in Los Angeles, but it's considered the Los Angeles Ren Fair. And they say it was the first one to ever happen. I'm not sure if that's actually the case or not, but they say it was the first Renaissance fair to ever happen in the U.S. And there's also a lot of little fairs and stuff like that. Like Idlewild, California has one. Escondido has one. So I'm going to, shop my stuff around and see who's interested. And I've decided already that I think like a big goal with this project is eventually I have to do it in some of the main areas where Lucian himself was. So I'm like, well, I have to bring this to Rome somehow, and I have to bring this to Athens somehow. So that's sort of like on the list of goals. I mean, one step at a time. First, I'm going to try to do it at a fair near where I live. And then we'll start thinking.
Fortunately, geographically, I do think Kansas City is on the way to, Rome and Greece and wherever else. So we do have a dang Ren Fest here if you're ever looking for one.
That could be how it works out, man. I'll do Ren fairs all the way from California to New York, and then eventually fly. I mean, maybe that's how it'll work out. We'll see. But yeah, I'm gonna take it one step at a time with this thing. I mean, the first step worked out well because I was like, well, if the show sucks and I don't think it's going anywhere, it'll just be a one and done thing. But people seemed to like it. People were laughing in the spots where they were supposed to laugh. That's always a good indication. And the songs went well. The stories went well. The jokes went well. It was easy to follow. You don't need to know anything about Lucian to follow this show. Like most of the people in the audience had never heard of him before. They just knew I was doing this thing. A couple people said they checked the Wikipedia beforehand just to, get a little bit of a heads up, and that was helpful or whatever. But you really don't need to do that. So yeah, it's.
So were you like in the costume and everything? Like, were you all dressed up and stuff?
I do have a costume, man. And I'll be honest with you, I have been thinking about doing this for over 10 years. At first I was thinking 10 years, but then I really sat down and did the math, and I'm like, it's been longer than 10 years since I've been thinking about doing this thing. And there were a couple reasons, and they're all shitty ones. One of the reasons was at the time when I first got the idea, I was in like my early mid-20s, and I was like a new stand-up. So I kind of thought, oh, this isn't stand-up. So I can't like this didn't pass the comedy scene smell test, so I can't possibly do this, because I was full of, I guess, even more piss and vinegar than I am now. And I really felt like I have something to prove. Now I don't. I feel like I have nothing to prove to anybody. So I just kind of, any creative project I want to do, I just try to do now. And life is much happier that way, I feel like. So I got around to doing it. But then the other big thing that was really holding me up, and this issue is legit, I really just don't like the idea of wearing a costume. Like, I just don't. I mean, I love the Ren Fair scene. I go every year. I'm not one of those people who dresses up. If that's like your thing, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum. I get it. I get why it's appealing. It's just not my thing. And so like the idea of wearing a costume was like really, I was in my head about it. And when I put on my costume for the first time officially, my wife looked at me and just started laughing. And I was like, it took me over a decade to get over this part, and you're laughing.
That's hilarious. I can relate to that though, because even though Halloween is probably easily my favorite holiday of all time, I'm still not all that into dressing up myself. Like, I'm not the kind of guy that goes out there and assembles a big fucking get up and then shows, oh, I'm Bonnie and Clyde or whatever the hell people dress up as. It's just not really my thing. Even though, like I said, Halloween probably easily my favorite holiday. I love everything else about it. So I like other people dressing up. Like, I like seeing other people's costumes. I'm also the same way. It's like you kind of get that like that weird like embarrassment feeling when you're wearing one. You're like, does everyone think I look as ridiculous as I clearly do? So I totally relate.
I'll go ahead and jump back in with the other thing. When I was a kid, I fucking loved getting my face painted. Any opportunity to get my face painted. I was also like, this is gonna make me sound like such a frat bro. I wasn't, but I would constantly, just as a joke, get painted for football games in high school. Like, I didn't give a fuck about the actual like fratty element of it. I actually I was
Sure
really
you
nerdy.
didn't.
I filmed the fucking football games for our school the first 2 years of my high school experience, but I would always get like painted, and it would like be stuff that was like nothing to do. Anyway, I always thought that shit was kind of fun, but anyway.
No, it is fun, man. I mean, and I love Halloween too. I'm actually the same way. And I will dress up for Halloween, but yeah, my costume is never like I'm not winning the costume contest ever. You know, like my costume is just a basic, like, yeah, here's a mask. I'm gonna put it on. Remember this movie? Yeah, that's me. And that's about it. I'm not like an overachiever in the costume department. So yeah, dressing up is just like not my jam. But eventually I just kind of got over it. I'm like, look, if you want to do this, you can't do a historic interpretation in jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
That's
Did you
just
like do you like curl your hair or something, or did you just go with your normal hairdo?
I mean, dude, I didn't go that far. I wore a hat. I wore a hat, and it covers my entire head. So it's
Gotcha.
just like, and then my big official thing was I was like, okay, these sunglasses that are on my face right now are not period appropriate. So once the sunglasses are off, I'm not Ron anymore. I'm Lucian. And that's how it worked for the show. Because, you know, I gave a couple announcements ahead of time just to kind of prep people like what they were getting in store for. And one of the things I mentioned, you know, shows like this, Ren Fair shows are very much like gratuities are part of what you do, you know? And so a lot of people, they have a pitch for gratuities included in the show itself. I was no different. But in this case, I didn't want people to actually tip me. This was just a free show in my neighborhood. Like, I didn't want that. So what I decided to do instead was that the gratuity basket was going to be passed around, but it was going to be donations for the homeless in San Pedro. So I announced that ahead of time just so people knew. I'm like, just so you know, I'm going to give a pitch for tips because it's part of the show and we're taping the show. But just know that the tips are not for me. This isn't a real pitch for tips. But if you have some cash and you want to throw it in, it's all for homeless people in San Pedro. And we actually raised a nice chunk of change. We raised $88 for homeless people in San Pedro, and then I kicked in 12 of my own to make it an even hundo. And you know, I Venmo'd it to some mutual aid efforts here in the neighborhood. So it was a really fun event. I got a great tape out of it. Which shout out to my wife. She helped. She made sure that the Zoom recorder was rolling, and she also taped it on her phone, so we had a backup. So shout out to my wife for making me. It actually eased my nerves a little bit when she laughed hysterically at my costume. I'm like, well, if my own wife is just, I mean, I might as well laugh about it too. But yeah, she was like super helpful. Made sure that the tape was good. Yeah, it was really fun, man. Like I really, there's a special feeling you get when you launch a new project. You know, it's like a new. People say it's like a new kid, but I can't speak to that because I don't have any kids. But
yeah, I mean, it's just a new thing to work on. I totally know what you're saying. Also, shout out to you, Jesse. Thanks for the $5. Sorry if Ron has already answered this, but could he elaborate at all on his falling out with Jimmy? Love his work. Obviously, you know, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to, Ron, but we do read out all the super chats. So if you want to respond.
Yeah, we could talk about it. I mean, look, if there's a falling out, you know something I don't. I've said that to everybody who's ever asked me, and that is the honest truth. I quit the show for a long list of reasons. I wanted to move on to other things. I think given the nature of this interview so far, I think it's obvious I have. That's why I quit. On a personal level, I don't have any beef with anybody involved. I don't have any ill will towards Jimmy. I don't have any ill will towards Steph. I don't have any ill will towards anybody who is still there, although admittedly, I'm not sure who all is still there and who all isn't. There's a lot of people who also quit around the same time I did. I was just the only one who was on camera the most, I believe. So yeah, I mean, if there's a falling out or if there's a beef, you know something I don't, because and when people say things like, well, like what's the quarrel all about? What's that all about? I'm like, well, I can say that there is none, because for like a quarrel to exist, that means two people are quarreling. So if I'm not quarreling with anyone, then a quarrel doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, there is no beef.
I don't know, man. Sounds like there's a beef. No,
yeah, right. I mean, it's like I don't have any, you know, like so. The only time that Jimmy, to my knowledge, said something about me it was in a positive light on Russell Brand's podcast. He gave me a name check, but in a good way. He mentioned the stuff I do for municipal broadband and I texted him and I was like, "Hey man, thanks for the shout out on Russell Brand." So I don't know. I mean, if he has a problem with me, that's a weird way to treat someone you have a problem with, giving them a name check on like one of the biggest comedy podcasts in the world. So yeah, I mean, that's all I got for you. I don't have any bad blood with anybody. It was just time for me to move on. And when I say I don't have bad blood, that doesn't mean we agree on everything. We certainly have our disagreements, when it comes to things going on in the world. But I don't have any ill will. I should probably, because I was like, oh yeah, if Jimmy called me, I'd be happy to hear from him. Calling is a two-way street. I could also call Jimmy and just say hello to the guy. I don't know why I don't. I probably should. And maybe I'll do that, Jesse. Maybe I'll do that today. But yeah, if there's some kind of falling out, something I don't.
Oh yeah, Ron's rising above it all. He's giving Jesse and the chat a good lesson in how to build bridges and not burn them. I like that.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, no, I wasn't trying to come down on Jesse. He just asked a question.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
But yeah. Oh, good.
Well, no, I'm glad to hear it. I mean, just on a personal level, it always sucks to see friends that politics gets in the way of just what should be a amicable relationship, regardless of differing perspectives. So, I mean, I'm glad to hear that it wasn't like some, horrible, like you're fired, Ron, fuck you for not agreeing with me on this issue.
No, there was nothing like that. There really wasn't. I mean, we certainly had our disagreements that we would talk about, but I mean, it was not. We talked it out. I decided it was time for me to quit. And the only reason too, that like, I'm always very steadfast in saying I quit is because there was that incident with the producer who was fired. And I've had to make it very, very clear that I am not that person. Like I tweeted when it initially happened. I'm just like, that's not me. I'm not a producer on the show. I'm a writer and contributor for the show. When the show was smaller, I did more producing,
Right.
but
also like the Jimmy Dore show isn't like Zach and I, when we have a disagreement, we'll spend, 30 minutes to an hour, however long it takes, hashing it out. Like we're not afraid to just spend the whole live stream debating each other if we disagree on something. I feel like with Jimmy's show, it's a little bit different. Like he doesn't really want his side piece to be like, pushing back all that much or like arguing with him. It's more just like the person on the side is mostly there to like bolster his points. So I can understand how, if there was some disagreements, it might not have been the best idea to kind of use the show to hash them out because that's just not really the format he operates under. So, I mean, I think you probably made the wise decision if you were getting to the point where it felt like, every segment was going to turn into a debate if you disagreed or something.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of more. I think kind of the thing there. It's like he's not like, and I'm not trying to like speak for him, but yeah, like it's not really looking to be a debate show. Nor are when you're trying to do, especially when you're trying to do like political comedy, like it's not necessarily like all that fun if it just turns into a debate all the time. But that being said, it's like, I mean, we definitely didn't agree on everything ever. And that's sort of, I mean, he supported Tulsi Gabbard. I supported Bernie Sanders. There were other elections, even in California, where we were supporting different people. So it's not like, and he never told me who I had to support or what I could or couldn't say. He would always let me ask people questions, like in an interview. He would always, I mean, like him and I think it was on the Jimmy Dore show. I'm not trying to like, give like one entity like all the credit or whatever, but I think we kind of changed Marianne Williamson's perspective on Julian Assange because, I mean, we were talking to her about it on the Jimmy Dore show. This was a long time ago.
Did she not support Julian Assange?
She does now.
Yeah.
But before she was a little more, I don't want to say she didn't support him, but I think she was a little more like timid about it. And, we kind of brought up some points. I mean, it wasn't in a hostile way. We just said, you should consider this, this, and this. And I jumped right into that interview and Jimmy let me. He didn't tell me I couldn't do that or whatever. He was actually encouraging, of the whole thing. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I think we answered the question.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you clearing that up, or I'm sure Jesse does at least. I kind of figured that was the status of things. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mean to call you. I didn't mean to call you a side piece, whatever the correct
Oh,
terminology is.
I didn't. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't take it that
What do
way.
you?
I
What
mean,
would you
that's fine.
call? What was your role? What was the technical term for that? A person
Well,
that.
I mean, it evolved over time. I mean, from 2018 to like 2019, I was a writer. I mean, I've always been a writer. That was how I like got, that was basically how it morphed into, like a full-time thing, but I was always a writer on the show. And then in like 2018, 2019, I produced some segments and stuff like that. But I had not produced something for the show since like 2019. So basically 2020 until like the end, I was like a writer and a contributor. And then, I mean, we just definitely were going in very different directions, and it was just sort of time for me to go. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like I was there for about 5 years. That show changed my life. I look back on most of my time there fondly. I have a lot of very happy memories from that show. Do we agree on everything, especially as of now? No, we don't. We definitely have our disagreements. Was it time for me to quit the show when I did? Yeah, absolutely. But, I look back on most of it fondly, and I really appreciate all the emails that I've gotten. I mean, I get a lot of really cool emails from people who like, oh, we miss you and this and that. I also get some pretty freaking psychotic emails too. I mean, I get people. I mean, someone once told me like, "You're a traitor," and like, "You broke our heart." Someone told me I broke their heart. Someone told me. I mean, I've gotten some weird stuff, and I kind of just have to sort of just do the old whatever and just kind of realize how bizarre that is. Like, look, I make every analogy is a music analogy in my world, so you'll have to indulge me. One of my favorite bands, who I actually got to see on Thursday night, is a band called the Hold Steady. I'm a big Hold Steady fan, and their keyboardist is a guy named Franz, who just adds so much to the freaking band. And Franz left the band. I want to say it was like 2010, 2011. He has since returned. But Franz left the band for a number of years, and we were all very, very sad, But it never dawned on me as I would like to think, a reasonable human being that I'm just like, Franz broke my heart and he's a traitor now. Like, I never thought that. Like, I just thought Franz wanted to move on to other things. And in his book, because he's also a writer, Franz is... he talked briefly about when he left the band, and he just said, look, man, and he made the analogy of hopping trains, like creative endeavors are kind of like hopping trains. And he goes, when you hop a train and you're riding a train, and all of a sudden you find out that this train is just not going where I'm going. Doesn't mean there's necessarily something wrong with the train. It just means I got to get off this train. This ain't my train anymore. Well, guess what? At some point, you got to jump off the train. And when you jump off a train, you don't know what's going to happen, man. You might like fall and tumble a bunch and skin your knees, and you might even break a limb or something. But at the end of it all, what's going to eventually happen? Well, you're going to stand up, you're going to brush yourself off, and you're going to keep walking, and you're going to be walking in the right direction. That's what happens when you quit any endeavor, whether it's a YouTube show or a movie or whatever. Whenever you leave something, that's what happens. So it's like I jumped off a train, man. It was time. It was time for me to jump off that train. It wasn't going where I was going, so I jumped off. And I probably stumbled a little bit. That probably happened. A lot of people know me from the Jimmy Dore show. I'm not there anymore. And people are totally welcome to get on board. No pun intended. Train analogy. I'm really riding it a while, aren't I? But people are welcome to get on board with the stuff I got going on now. I just finished a short film. I'm working on a movie. I do a historical interpretation of a dude who died a couple thousand years ago. And I still tour with stand-up. And of course, I still have Get Your News On with Ron, and I'm a once-a-week co-host over at Status Quo now, too. So I got plenty of stuff that people are welcome to follow should they should they want to follow me and what I'm doing now. And, I've always been the type of comedian where it's like variety is sort of the spice of life. So I kind of like having a bunch of different things going on.
Yeah, I think to keep your band analogy or to hijack it, I guess for a second, it's kind of like when a band puts out a complete change in record sound. Obviously at that point, people are slow to warm up to it, and then 10 years from now, when they're on a completely different sound, you're like, man, I wish I would go back to that sound, that they were already doing. But anyway, also wanted to give a quick shout out to Kelly. This is a great point that I didn't even really think about until you super chatted. A tribute to Salvador Allende and the people of Chile on this tragic day. Never forget 9/11/73. All terrorism is symbolic as it is violent. And of course, this is in reference to the coup d'etat backed by Americans, 100% of Salvador Allende. And that's how they installed the vicious fascist Pinochet regime, which reigned terror all over Chile for the rest of the 70s and onward.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelly, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. And like I said, great reminder. Obviously, most people are talking about the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center happened in 2001, but that's also something that's worth remembering, obviously, especially given the U.S. role in said coup, which, as you said, Zach, installed, the dictator Pinochet. So great reminder. Thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate the super chat. I know we had a couple stories about Amazon, Ron, that we wanted to get into, but really quickly, I saw a few people in the chat asking us to address something that we haven't talked a lot about on the show, but that I'd be really interested in getting your perspective on, your opinion on. Recently, there was a GQ article that was about AOC that really kind of set the internet ablaze and definitely divided the left on Twitter, as a lot of things about AOC do. This is an article where they're interviewing her. And there's some, fancy photos on the cover, of course, definitely playing up her status as a fashion icon and all that stuff. And, there's definitely a lot of elements of this article that have kind of gone viral and have been shared around a lot, have a lot of people reacting to them. Here, I'll throw up one particular quote that I think kind of is representative of the bulk of this article and the style in which it's written. Oops, not this. Here we go. For a fleeting moment in front of the Supreme Court, it was possible to see the full, complicated public totality of the woman we've come to know as AOC, a 32-year-old second-term congresswoman representing one of the country's most diverse districts, a certified celebrity, arguably more famous than any other person in American politics, without the last name Obama or Trump, beloved and loathed at competing ends of the political spectrum, constitutionally opposed to sitting down, shutting up, and conforming to the patriotic play theater of Washington, the right wing's night terror in the flesh. Too many foot soldiers of the fractured, contradictory coalition that is the progressive left. She represents something singular, the future, a revolutionary on the rise, the clear heir to an ascendant progressive movement, the best and possibly last, depending on how quickly some combination of fascism, religious fundamentalism, and climate change comes for us all. A chance, a source for hope that things can get better in their lifetimes. So just to preface, with my opinion, first of all, obviously there are some people that over fixate, that over obsess about AOC and act like she's the worst thing ever, and that she's just as bad as someone like Donald Trump or Joe Biden, which is just not true. She's clearly better in a number of ways. She's not the recipient of as much corporate money, if any. So there's definitely some really things that separate her for the better from characters like that. However, I think that this article, the way it's written, the way that she talks about a lot of things in it is very representative of a lot of the problems that people like I have with AOC, which is that it's all very self-centered. It's all very, I'm the victim. Let me talk about how, my experience on January 6th over and over again. Let me talk about, my personal struggle over and over again. It's like, I don't really care about you. I don't really care about any politician and their personal life struggles or whatever. I'm interested in what you're going to do to help the people that elected you on a progressive platform in order to go into Washington and cause a ruckus and fight the corporate Democrats and the corporate Republicans. And instead, it seems like her entire personality, her entire existence has just kind of been boiled down, reduced down to this constant self-victimization, constant narcissism, and just talking about yourself and all of this personal experiences you've had. But do you guys see it the same way? What's your read on all this?
I guess I can go first. Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny because I mean, this is my first time. I didn't bother reading this article, like this is my first introduction to it, but I did find it rather humorous that people, especially like on social media and so on, were all going, "Oh my God, this idol worship of the Queen over in England is so bizarre and weird." Which, by the way, it is bizarre and weird, but here in the United States, we have no room to point fingers. We are really throwing stones from a glass house because, simultaneously AOC's on the cover of GQ and stuff like that. And yeah, I think, Gavin, I totally agree with the way you framed it. Like, yeah, there are some people who like really over fixate on AOC and the squad and stuff like that. On the same note, and I agree with you that it's like, look, my whole thing, I don't really care for any politicians. I don't follow any of them. I don't think any of them are above criticism. I just want to see policies that I want in the world to happen. So would I rather deal with an AOC than say, a Donald Trump or a Mitch McConnell? Of course I would. I'm going to pick AOC 100 times out of 100. Does that mean she's above criticism? Abso-freaking-lutely not. Has she done a lot of things that are worthy of criticism? Totally. And I think, it's totally fair to criticize that the squad is not voting as a block. They have constantly not voted as a block. And that's what we elected them to do. We elected them to be a force for progressive values, working in tandem to kind of fight the machine. And that's not happening. That's certainly worthy of criticism. But yeah, sometimes, people tend to fixate on a lot of the high sugar fluff. And yeah, I mean, that could get a bit tiring and counterproductive.
Yeah, I feel like we gave all of our good disclaimer. Like, obviously, there are people that are crazy and they are legitimate misogynists or they don't want to see like a woman in power. But I feel like that's often a kind of a framework that they use to discourage legitimate criticism of their more like sacred leaders. Like if you're an actual like, progressive stalwart, they will like throw you under the bus and say all kinds of like racist and horrible things about you, give you the James Carville treatment and all that kind of stuff. But they also kind of use it as a barrier. And that's one of the things that really fucking agonized me about this article, right? Was I felt like this could have been an article in the 90s written about like Hillary Clinton, like Slay Queen.
Sure.
And, like this is all about the yassification of AOC to me. And it could have been Nancy Pelosi before her, right? It's all about like which kind of woman can we project our fantasy onto and then have her be that icon that represents everything and then subsequently nothing at the same time. And I think that's the real problem with AOC. Like, of course, too, all of these less informed people who were massively inspired by Bernie Sanders and saw her on a stage with him and, all the movement and everything and then kind of unplugged. They do still have all of that, feeling in their brain that she's like a revolutionary spirit. But the fact of the matter is that if you follow the ins and outs of this, you understand that it's not. And when there's never any pushback. This is all like fawning, flattering praise throughout this entire GQ interview. Even when they have to like reckon with the fact that she's basically accomplished nothing. Like first they'll talk about how she's never going to quit, never going to give up the fight for abortion rights. And then it's like, well, you kind of did quit and you kind of did give up the fight for abortion rights after that one, like kind of like, okay, we debated the merits of that protest on this podcast. And then, but she cuddled a crying woman that was saying over and over again how scared she was. It's like, okay, yeah, but that woman still can't get a fucking abortion in Missouri where I live, right? If she needs to, that's a problem. And then on top of that, you have it reduced her different, like criticisms of AOC and Nancy Pelosi. And it's basically like, they just hate to see two strong women winning, two girls bossing it up. Like that's what you mean. And then it comes down to, he asked her about Nancy Pelosi and of course, no criticism there. There's we have a very professional relationship. It's all we've talked about this a lot. I feel like I've beaten my head on the table. It reminds me so much of the Tax the Rich dress. It's all the Met Gala. This is what it is. It is the penultimate like representation of selling out. Like she has gone from being like Jerry Rubin when he was with Abby Hoffman in the 70s and the Yuppies, and now he's stumping for Gary Hart, and he's made $1 million off of Apple Computer, and he's like, no, we're Yuppies now, and you can be rich and be a hippie. And it's like, no, dude, you just sold out your entire movement. That's what I feel like is happening to AOC.
Well, I would agree with that. I do agree with that. And like, I don't care if progressives or socialists have money themselves. Like, I don't care if you're rich and you're a socialist. My problem is that, you know, she does this whole article and it's all about her. It's all about her and her experiences and what a victim she is. Meanwhile, she's one of the most privileged people in the goddamn country. Like, she's more privileged than 99% of anyone that lives in this country just because of her net worth and how much, you know, social cachet she has. Like, here's these photos of her looking like a freaking Greek goddess and stuff. Like, why aren't you talking about the working class struggle? Why aren't you talking about the issues that actually seriously affect people that you're in office to try to legislate into existence? Like, that's why we sent you there, not to turn you into some sort of like fucking, you know, inspirational character or whatever. Like, I don't give a fuck about who you are and what your personal story is, to be completely frank. All I care about is, are you going to pass the policies? Are you going to help working class people? And again, I just feel like this article is like putting her up on this pedestal instead of, you know, just treating her as if she's one of us, like one of the people, one of the proletariat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just think the fact of the matter is that she's not anymore, and this is them reminding us that.
Well, I think what makes it frustrating, like what makes it the most frustrating is, again, because we're not really seeing any type of results, and we're not really even seeing any type of attempt. You know, if they were doing, and I'm not even just singling out AOC. I mean the entire squad, every single, like, you know, person who was elected to represent the left. I mean, keep in mind, it's like we got these people elected. It was grassroots movements that got Ilhan Omar elected, that got AOC elected. If I could say, and if anyone who's paying attention could say, that they are clearly using every tool in their arsenal to fight for our interests, I wouldn't care about the superficial stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't care if she like gets along with Nancy. Who cares? She's an elected official. She's going to have to deal with colleagues that are really repulsive. That's part of the gig. But the fact that it's like, you guys aren't doing what we elected you to do, that's not happening. There's always just enough present votes or just enough no votes. And then I forget who said it. I forget if it was Jay Appel, but it was somebody who just said, look, at the end of the day, we're all by ourselves in there. And it's like, dude, we elected you to use your power. It was
Cori
as
Bush,
a
I think.
unit. It was
She was
Cori
like,
Bush.
we vote alone. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, and I get what she means in principle, but it's like, we elected you to, as a unit, fight against this machine. And you're so brazenly just not doing that. So if you're not going to do that, it's like what confidence can we have that there's any hope for change on the federal level? And so, yeah, that is a very big problem. And this is why I have, you know, I mean, I said this, we were interviewing somebody who was trying to get dark money out of the DNC over on Status Quo on Thursday. And I just said to the guy, I'm like, look, I respect what you're trying to do, but I have as much faith in the Democratic Party as I do in a God, and I'm an atheist. So, you know, I really just have no confidence in this institution. And that's why, like, I just feel like we really got to change the rules, and we really got to change the circumference of our politics to include other parties. Because if the squad, for instance, was part of a different party, they would be acting as a block because they're part of a different party. They don't have any allegiances to Democrats. So they would be acting as a block, and the mainstream parties, which in this case would be Democrats and Republicans, would need to come to them to get anything through. That's the way it works in other countries that have more parliamentary representative systems. They have a bunch of different parties. A lot of the left-wing parties don't hold a ton of seats, no, but you have to get the communists and the socialists and the labor parties. You have to get them on board to get policy through. So the right-wing party is not as far right as our parties. The center party is actually a center party. It's not some fringe right-wing party, you know? So I think like that's what really needs to happen. Otherwise, we're just going to have two right-wing parties like we have now, like a neo-fascist lunacy right-wing party and a right-wing party. So some say the Democrats are center-right. I think that's being too generous. They are a right-wing party. In the eyes of any other country in the world, they would be considered a right-wing party, not even a center-right party.
And the real disappointing thing to me about the squad and AOC is like, I feel like they took Joe Biden's election and his triumph over Bernie Sanders as like an excuse not to be the radicals that they promised they would be. They're like, oh, well, Joe Biden's the nominee now. So what are we going to do? We got to tuck our tail in between our legs and kind of just walk away in defeat, because obviously we're not going to change anything as long as this guy is president. That seems to be their logic. It seems like they were ready to go in there and, start the freaking revolution when it looked like Bernie Sanders was ascendant. But again, as soon as Biden kind of stole the nomination at the last second, it was like, well, what are we going to do about it? Oops. So the problem with that is that the exact opposite calculus should have been made. Under Biden, that's when we need you to be the radical and the revolutionary even more. Bernie was sympathetic to your policy goals and to the goals of the movement. Biden's not at all. So you need to fight him 10 times as hard. You need to bring 100 times the heat that you were going to under Bernie Sanders in regard to the establishment. And instead, it just seems like, it all dissipated. Under Trump, she was doing those super emotional photo shoots out of the, the cages with the kids at the border. Under Biden, it's like, she barely talks about it. I think she put out one tweet at the beginning of the administration that was like, this is very bad. I do not, support this. But none of the theatrics, none of that kind of like activist energy, because she's terrified of pissing off Democratic leadership. It's so unfortunate to watch happen, because again, at one point it seemed like there was at least a solid bunch of people in there that were going to fight for us. And now, again, they're better than frickin', the most corporate Democrats and the obviously Republicans. But it's just such a shame.
Yeah.
Such wasted potential.
Oh, for sure. And the one thing I wanted to add was once you see pictures of AOC like that, it doesn't matter who they are, but I feel like AOC gets the most press. She gets the most covers. She's on Vogue. She's on GQ. She's across the board. We see her the most. She's in the Tax the Rich dress. And that's because she's a young, attractive looking woman. So it's easy to sell magazines if she's on the front of it. Right. But you look at those and you think about the intense working class energy that you got from AOC in the Knock Down the House documentary. I don't know if you ever saw that documentary, Ron.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah,
for sure. I figured you did, but I wanted to ask. But I felt like I got a really and I'm a bartender, right? And so naturally, I wasn't at the time, but I think back on it, I'm like, well, bartenders are like as working class as you fucking get, right? Yeah. You clean up people's messes for a living all day. You chat with everybody about how stressed they are about their job. It's why I really like it. I like chatting with people. I like knowing what's the pulse is and the crossroads of Kansas City. I like that, but you get such a working class energy from the restaurant folks because they're serving regular working class people, and I had so much of that feeling of AOC's energy when she was running. And then I look at these GQ articles, and I'm like, there's no way, it's impossible that she would ever go back to working in a bar. She wouldn't ever consider it something that would be in her purview to do. I'm above that now, and that's like my least favorite thing. Like people who think that they've now like transcended to like being above like, the working class. And I just feel like you get a little bit of like, oh, like now I'm better than, the working class. Now I'm in these like, $1,000 designer gowns. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's the image that she's projecting to people. And I feel like it means that now you'll never, ever have her go back to being just a regular working class one of us. Like, I don't know.
Oh, no, totally, man. I mean, that's just another problem in just the politics of it all, because, Ro Khanna said this. I'm actually quoting Ro Khanna. He said, if you are in the United States Congress, when it comes to power, you are in the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. You're among the most powerful people in the world if you're like in the United States Congress. And it shouldn't be that way, because the reason it is that way is because we basically pillage the entire world. We have an economy of war. We're setting the Middle East on fire. And then that's how we are the empire, like that. That's how we are. That's what we are. And so they'll never, I mean, I remember I was at some single payer event in California, and these people were pleading with some of our elected officials, and they said, you're never going to know what this is like. You will never know what it's like to not be able to afford your medical bills. You have no clue, because you have government healthcare that is you have some of the best healthcare in the world. And, we, the people, have nothing. And it is so incredibly warped. I mean, we are the class division in this country is so fierce, and it's getting worse. I mean, the gap just between the rich and the poor in general is getting so huge. And our elected officials, well, they're part of the winning circle. And really, it's like we are becoming a country of just winners and losers. And the winners are just people who were either born that way, or they did a lot of terrible things to get ahead, or a combination thereof, or they're part of the political ruling class, or they're part of the corporate political ruling class, which, let's be honest, at the end of the day, that's who's really calling the shots. And the rest of us are just the peasants.
So true. Also, thank you for the $2, Donald. I don't like how cozy the Dims are with Hollywood. I mean, yeah, I guess me neither. I don't like how cozy they are with, big oil either, or the military-industrial complex. Also, it's true that Dims are certainly star fuckers, but so are Republicans. I mean, they fucking idolize Ronald Reagan, a Hollywood celebrity. Same with Donald Trump. And every time there's a single conservative, whether it's Clint Eastwood or whoever else, Kanye, fucking Kid Rock, they'll be the first to star fuck too. They're like, oh, fucking Kid Rock's on our side. Thank God we have Clint Eastwood over here, 90-year-old man fucking talking to himself. Like, thank God we have some fucking celebrity that can affirm our shitty viewpoint. So, I mean, both parties are equally guilty of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, it's pretty rough being like an actual lefty in Hollywood, because it's like you really do have the smallest of the smallest of the smallest lane available to you, because it's like, yeah, there is a huge, Democratic establishment, neoliberal presence in Hollywood. That's definitely there. There's definitely like a GOP presence too, totally, because it's like you got a lot of people that have money. And then, kind of like the right wing or whatever, like they have their little niche. I mean, you mentioned like the Kid Rocks and the Ted Nugents, and the big difference is like those entities, like they all have a lot of money. So when people say like, oh, it's really hard to be right wing in Hollywood, no, it isn't. Because like if you are, and when I say right wing, I mean by the American standard. I mean, I would argue like, well, if you're Democratic establishment, you're right wing too. You're just a like mildly softer brand of right wing. But like if you're like, Republican GOP right wing, there's still a big lane for you, because there are like the Vince Vaughns and stuff like that. If you're an actual leftist in Hollywood, it's like, yeah, man, there's a really, really small lane for you. I'm not going to say it's non-existent, because it isn't, thank goodness. And it's getting better, like it is evolving, or at least that's what I tell myself to sleep easier at night. But it's like, like it is kind of the smallest lane. And it's interesting. Like I have colleagues, like in different parts of the world. Like I have some colleagues in Italy and stuff like that. And that's totally not the case in a lot of other parts of the world. Like in a lot of other parts, like in Italy, it's just like, most of the creatives, like they're communists and socialists and stuff like that, and that's just like, that's to be expected. Like, yeah, you're a creative person because like you have like empathy and stuff, so of course you're left wing. That's usually how it goes. So
also, it's just so true that like right wingers are artistically challenged. Like, I'm sorry, just objectively, right wingers make shittier art. Like, I'm sorry, but it's true. Even there's left wing artists or artists that I like who used to be left wing, and I swear to God, they made a transition politically, and you notice a drop off in the quality of their art. Like Ariel Pink, for example. Yeah, Ariel Pink's one of my favorite musicians. He was kind of like a lo-fi, like bedroom pop kind of artist. Big in the early 2000s, not big, but in the indie scene.
I'm not familiar.
You should check him out. His early stuff's really good. He was super innovative. He recorded a lot of his music on like cassettes, like in super low budget shit. Great, one of my all time favorite artists. But he got really into the Trump stuff and the January 6th stuff, and he actually was at January 6th. He basically got canceled for it. He lost all of his like record label deals and all of his connections within the industry. And he's just super cringy now. He's just like a fucking shitty right wing poster online, always whining about like just the most like degenerate fucking conspiracies and all this bullshit. And his music has literally become so much worse since then. Like it's not even like. It's not even a matter of opinion. It's literally an objective fact. His music is significantly worse, less creative, less inspired than it was. And I mean, I don't know why, but that's just my personal anecdotal observation.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, a lot of times it's like, especially in the comedy world, there's a certain thing where it's like, there's a David and Goliath thing where it's like you're criticizing the powerful. And that's sort of what it's always been about throughout human history. So whenever you see someone go, well, screw it, man, I'm going to team up with Goliath, it doesn't really work well. It's not really enjoyable to see, like it's not like, so yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess that segues into our next conversation topic, which I believe we were going to get a little bit into your antitrust summer.
Yeah, it's so right now a lot of the attention is on Amazon because Amazon, who's always doing a lot of very, very dangerous things. As of recent, they had arguably their most dangerous merger to date. I would say it is by far their most dangerous merger. And it was a merger with two entities. I'll do the less scary one first. The less scary one, still very scary, but less scary than the two, is they merged with iRobot. iRobot is the company that puts the cameras in Roombas, those things that like kind of sweep up your floor. So if you have a Roomba
Also, isn't
now,
iRobot like a fucking Will Smith
Will
movie?
Smith movie.
oh really?
Yeah, there's a movie called iRobot that came out in like 2007. It's like a dystopian science fiction film.
Yeah, dude,
Really?
that's what I was like. I was like, why the fuck would you name your company?
I mean, yeah, I guess they're not even trying to be subtle about it, man. I mean, it's just like that is the company. I've not seen that movie, admittedly, but yeah, like so they bought that, and so now the company that already harvests your data to try to sell you more and more shit, well, now they know what's in your house now. So they could, if your couch breaks, they'll know right away. They can tell you to get a new couch. So it's pretty creeptastic. Um, but the scariest merger of the two, and at least the way I see it, they merged with One Medical, which One Medical is basically a healthcare company, and they specialize in a lot of telehealth. I don't know exactly how widely available they are as of now, but their membership start at $199 a year. So for roughly $200 a year, you can get their insurance. And again, they do have a heavy focus on telehealth and stuff like that. And why I think this is especially disturbing is Jeff Bezos, one of the most powerful people in the world, is now getting involved in our predatory healthcare system, making it even worse. But B, you think about what Amazon has done thus far and who Amazon is. Like, well, what did Amazon do? Well, Jeff Bezos, thanks to money from his parents and their rich friends, had a bunch of runway and capital to run Amazon.com at a loss for as many years as he needed to run it as a loss. And it went from going from being just an online bookstore to being responsible for over half of all online commerce. And it grew that way because he was able to operate at a loss for as long as he needed to. Well, guess what? He still has unlimited cash flow. The guy is, on his way to becoming a trillionaire. I don't know who the richest person in the world is at the moment. I know it goes back and forth between him and Elon Musk. I don't know which one is at the top right now, but it's, he's among the richest people in the world. So he's going to try
Looks
to do
like
this.
Jeff's still sitting on the top of that.
Oh, is Jeff still at the top? Yeah, but like he's going to do the same thing with healthcare now. He's going to operate at a loss as long as he needs to until he monopolizes healthcare the same way he monopolized online commerce, which our healthcare system is already by far the worst in the industrialized world by a lot. They are some of the most predatory companies in the world. So you're going to have the ultimate predator in Jeff Bezos because he will out-predator all of them, and then he will get pretty much a monopoly. I mean, this is the guy who has let his employees piss in bottles so that they can make their routes. This is the guy who will park an ambulance outside of a warehouse facility because he'd rather pay for people's ambulance ride when they collapse from heat exhaustion than have proper ventilation in the warehouses because it's cheaper to just do that. So that's who this is. And by the way, there's another story in the news. In July of this year, so, a little over a month ago, 3 people in 3 weeks literally died in warehouses in New Jersey. So people literally died because of the condition in those warehouses. They died doing their job that they weren't getting paid a living wage for. That guy is going to be in charge of healthcare. I mean, that is just wow. And now with the people who died in the warehouses, there's about 30 different labor groups that are trying to make Amazon, the Amazon CEO, who actually isn't Jeff Bezos, it's someone else who's, just kind of a figurehead appointed on his behalf. But they want the Amazon CEO to have to testify to Congress and to, just the labor board about this because people are literally dying. And of course, you know, our federal government is dragging their feet like they always do. But this is like dystopian level. Wow. And so I encourage everyone, go to antitrustsummer.com. That's antitrustsummer.com. There's good antitrust legislation out there right now that's going to start breaking big tech up, and in particular, Amazon. So again, antitrustsummer.com. It takes less than 40 seconds. Please do sign the petition. Chuck Schumer has promised to vote on this legislation in the fall. We are in the fall, folks. So we got to keep fighting. We got to be loud. So please go to antitrustsummer.com and sign the petition.
That sounds based. I did need to correct myself. The list when I Googled it showed Jeff Bezos as the richest man in the world, but he's actually the third richest man in the world now.
Oh, is
behind
he?
the Louis Vuitton guy and then Elon Musk.
Oh,
yeah, I thought
didn't
it was
know-
Musk still. I thought it was fucking Elon Musk. He's so fucking rich now. Anyway, thank you so much, Adi, the bug catcher. Really appreciate that $10. That's crazy. iRobot keeps all your floor plan data, address, furniture, and behavior in an unencrypted, publicly accessible repository. Don't use Roombas. Use Neato, Neatbot, etc. if you need a VACbot. Damn, that's
I use a
genuinely
broom.
crazy.
I'm OG.
Me too, man.
I'm really
Me too.
OG, man. I use a broom. I feel like if I ever got one of those things, my cat would just be my cat would wrestle it to death.
I've actually seen some pretty funny videos of cats riding on Roombas around the floor. So yeah, no, obviously I don't have one either, but I also, you know, Zach and I don't have that big of an apartment. So I understand if you have like a huge house or something and you want to keep it clean. So, you know, whatever, but that's good suggestions, Adi. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Everyone use Neato, Neatbot, not Roombas, because that's genuinely crazy. Floor plan data, address, furniture, and behavior. I don't even know what that means. Behavior, like how you treat your Roomba. I don't know.
Probably more like your habits. You know, like how dirty you.
Well, or like what you're buying. Like if you like let's say it sees you in your kitchen a lot and you're cooking falafels. You know, I had frozen falafels last night for dinner. So it's like maybe they'll start feeding you falafel ads, you know, like order your falafels from Amazon or whatever. So yeah, but I mean, and it's sort of the same thing that happens with Ring, you know, like if you want to get you know, like a cam, like at your front door or whatever, like don't get Ring, because Ring, they have contracts with law enforcement that they will give away all of that footage to law enforcement. So basically your entire neighborhood is under surveillance if everyone has a Ring. And they did that deliberately to just kind of like, you know, help out cops and stuff. And, you know, there's been reports of cops using it for great means, like finding information on an ex-girlfriend they're angry at and stuff like that. So,
yeah, that's one of the most like truly dystopian things is the Ring cameras and how they've basically created a massive network of surveillance. Like obviously, yeah, there are specific incidents where it's come in handy, and I'm sure like they've caught the killer or whatever thanks to that. But still, like, it's crazy how you basically can't do anything in this day and age without it being on camera. Like basically no matter where you are. And again, I'm not like fucking simping for criminals or whatever, but like
right.
you can't do anything without being surveilled now. Like even if you're just doing literally whatever, like you're going to be on camera somewhere.
Well, let's be honest, man, there's no decent evidence out there, or pretty much any evidence whatsoever, that this helps them quote unquote catch the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's more evidence to the contrary that actually this stuff makes things even worse. Like stuff like facial recognition software, there's mismatches so often that it actually makes stuff worse. It doesn't help them catch the bad guy. It helps them like target innocent people who they think is like somebody they're not because of like a mismatch on the software. So it's total. I mean, it's just total nonsense that this kind of stuff makes us safer. And it's so crazy that it's like Amazon Ring convinced people that they need this product, and part of the reason people are convinced they need it is because they don't want their Amazon packages taken off of their front stoop. So it's like Amazon basically created a problem and then gave you the solution, and they're going to keep doing this. They're just going to keep doing it.
Speaking of Amazon packages, it's just crazy. Like we have a little package room in our apartment, you know, where you go to get your packages, and you see everyone else's packages there. It's wild. Like you walk in there, at least 85% of the packages in there have the Amazon, you know, packaging. Like basically everyone's package, mail, whatever, it's coming from Amazon. So like, I mean, it's just fucking crazy that that's the way it is. It's basically completely monopolized the industry.
Yeah. And you mentioned how we're all being surveilled, like even, you know, not to like simp for criminals. It's like obviously there's like esoteric examples, but like, you know, say that Gavin and I want to like go smoke a joint outside somewhere, and we're like having to like look around and be like, what the fuck is like some like old lady's Ring camera gonna like send me a ticket in the mail in like fucking 18 months? I don't know. Not that that's actually like the worst.
Is it medical in Missouri? What's your guys' status?
Yeah, it's medical, but I was mostly just trying to think of like an example of something that I could be doing that's like an innocuous crime. Like maybe jaywalking's a better example. That's still illegal everywhere. You know, I forget you're a California guy. It's all like golden and sunshine, smoke as much as you want in public, probably. But
well, yeah, but we can't jaywalk. No, they're actually pretty serious about that on the West Coast. They're
See,
really,
there you go. They're stripping our rights from us left and right. You know, you win one, they take another. But all I was gonna say was it's crazy how that, like, you don't even have an opportunity to consent to that, right? Like it used to be, you had to consent to be photographed. You had to consent to like be filmed. And I was thinking about, there was this, I don't even remember what the fuck noir it was, but I was watching a Criterion Channel noir film. Maybe you've seen it and can tell me, Gavin, but one of the characters in there is like a suspect of a murder, and he refuses to be photographed. So this is admittedly probably like 1940 when this is getting made. But
that's that Hitchcock movie, right?
Yeah.
The Trouble with Harry or something, maybe.
It's something like that. It was on Criterion over the winter when I was watching a bunch. But I was like, that's an impossibility now. There is no way that you could be a 30-year-old man and just be like, oh, I've never been photographed. I refuse to be photographed. Like, you know, obviously that's an extreme example, but you can't even be like, no, I don't really like being filmed. It's like, you won't even know.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, thank you once again, Adi, for the $5. By behavior, I mean cleanliness, what rooms, furniture you're buying, where do you hang out most, based on what part needs cleaning. Yeah, it's just so creepy to think about. And I know that like sometimes having these conversations, people like, oh, you're just a Luddite, you know, you're just afraid of this new technology because it wasn't around when you grew up. Like, oh, calm down. People said the same thing about all technology when it first came onto the scene. But like, I'm sorry, there is a point where technology just becomes unnecessary, and it is just an instrument of like the freaking police state or whatever. Like, no one needs a freaking Amazon Echo, you know, no one needs these stupid smart home devices, which basically just exist to, you know, so you don't have to go walk 5 feet over and turn a light switch or turn on your TV. Like, no one needs that. In the same way that like obviously there are serious, really, there's utility for like the internet. You know, like I'm not anti-internet. Like there's clearly a lot of resources. It's helped with like medical industries and their ability to do research. And like there's all these real obvious, you know, benefits for that. But like at some point it does become necessary, and you're not just a Luddite for acknowledging that. Like, again, I don't think there's any goddamn practical use for Echo, Amazon Echo or Alexa or all of these creepy fucking smart home bullshit technologies, which literally just exist to surveil you and mine your data in order to turn around and sell it for the highest profit.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, yeah. Are there some people that take it to a place where it is just sort of, you know, like paranoia? Sure, that happens, but it's totally reasonable to recognize that these technologies are being used in very dishonest and unethical and Orwellian ways. And that's very, very real. So, yeah, I mean, you can still embrace new technology. I mean, obviously, I value the internet, too. I mean, look at all these stores that it's open. But, you know, I mean, I don't know. The great philosopher of our time, Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, did say, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So,
Wasn't that his like uncle or whatever?
Uncle Ben.
oh, was it Uncle Ben?
Right before he dies, he's like, with great power comes great
Oh,
responsibility.
okay. All right. Well, now you
Kendrick
spoiled
actually
it.
samples that on his most recent tour too. That's it's sticking in. It's seeping into the public consciousness, that concept. And honestly, probably for another day, I don't want to drag us off into the weeds, but I do really think that, you know, aside from the Luddite argument, I've been reading a lot of like fucking anthropology and like really deciding what decisions, as obviously you can, you know, hindsight's 2020, but it is kind of a cool thought experiment to go back and look at and be like, what inventions actually were beneficial to human society over like, you know, 500, 800 years, right? Like, so obviously like medicine, like healing people, treatments, those are obviously massively beneficial. Things that you might not want to keep around, like money, you know, guns, nuclear weapons, like, you know, those kinds of things. So just an interesting thought experiment. I would definitely add fucking Ring doorbell cameras to that fucking list, somewhere close to the more innocuous side, but still on the things I would, you know, like to see with that.
Absolutely. And thank you once again, Kelly, by the way, for the $4.99. Really appreciate that, Kelly. Amazon is a perfect example of how tech, cybernetics can be applied for better uses than making a profit. Think control systems and feedback at scale. Yeah, really appreciate the super chat. Kelly, do you agree with that, Zach?
Yeah, I would say, Kelly, you were reminding me so much of what it was like to hang out with people that were way smarter than me at a startup, where it's like, oh yeah, you're saying tech words, and I'm like, cybernetics, I think I know what that means. Control systems and feedback, I know what those mean. And I'm like, yes, Kelly, you are smart. So Amazon is a perfect example of those things. But to be honest, I really have no idea.
I was kind of thinking that too. That it's like I think this might have went over my head a little bit, but I think what Kelly is getting at is that these technologies, they can be put to very positive uses or very negative ones. I mean, the idea when you look at the ability that Amazon has, I mean, yeah, there could be some good things that they could do with those resources, but instead, what do? Well, they hijack our data just so they can sell us their generic products of something. I mean, that's what they do. And that's what these antitrust bills start to break up. They will just harvest your data. And I'm not saying there's any like, well, they could do good things with our data. That's not what I mean. But I mean the technology that allows them to do that. There's probably so many better uses for it. But what they do instead is they harvest our data so that they can find out what we want to buy and then feed us their generic version of whatever that thing it is we want to buy. So it's just a matter, and then of course, you know, like they make money off your data in plenty of other ways too. So yeah, I mean, it's just,
and
it's amazing the tools we have and then what we use them for.
And it's really crazy too, just how much Amazon has expanded since like when I was a kid, and Amazon was just like your basic online bookstore, and then they started adding a few other things, and then it's like they bought Whole Foods. And I actually, you know, back in the day, Whole Foods has this reputation now for being super bougie and stuff, but like there was a point where it was like a serious, you know, kind of health food store, and you could trust them to have like organic alternatives to, you know, whatever the hell you're going to get at Target or Walmart, and like it really had a value to it as a grocery store. Now, if you go to Amazon, like all of the 365 products, which is like their in-store brand, those aren't even organic anymore. Like they're basically just repackaging the same shit you are going to find at Target and Walmart, and selling it to you at twice the price, because you still in your mind think, oh, this is better, this is organic, this is, you know, the Whole Foods seal of approval or whatever. But again, even I was reading an article about their meat. Like if you go to Whole Foods, you assume the meat is going to be sourced from better places than, again, Walmart, Target, but more and more so. I think like over 60% now of the meat at the deli at Whole Foods is just conventionally raised beef, pork, chicken, whatever. It's all the same shit. Again, it's just in this like cleaner, you know, fancier, bougier veneer. So they really ruin everything they touch. And I'm assuming the same thing's going to happen to all these other companies they've bought out and are, you know, monopolizing as well.
Yeah, they also just, I think, are now charging you so you don't have to shop around poor people. It's like, oh, come in here, everything's too expensive for the poor.
Yeah, that also true. Very
true.
I
mean, well, I remember it was like sort of like almost hip type thing many years ago, and then I think it all started when they found out that like the CEO is like, isn't he kind of like a big kind of homophobic douchebag?
He's a huge like pro-capitalist guy. He's
really like he's
capital.
Not a good guy, and he's had like horrible take after horrible take. So people were like, well, screw that guy. I don't want to give him my business. And then Jeff Bezos was like, well, I can make this worse. And he bought it. And that brought us up to present.
Yeah. Also, thank you so much, Christina. Thank you for discussing surveillance on the anniversary of 9/11. This started under George Bush on September 12th, 2001. Absolutely correct. And that's a great point. I mean, it was kind of unintentional, but you're right that there is some poetry to us talking about surveillance and the expanding, you know, police state on the anniversary of 9/11, which of course was used as a justification for the foundation of a lot of what we're experiencing now. So thank you so much, Christina. You're absolutely on point.
Oh, the Patriot Act. Fun times. I still, one of the few parts that I really did genuinely enjoy in like our, you know, just sort of like our political sphere was in 2008. There was the initial presidential debates, and I was a Kucinich guy. And they just had this question where they go, Congressman Kucinich, you're the only person standing on this stage who voted against the Patriot Act. And he just goes, yeah, that's because I read it. And then they finished the question. And he probably was the only person on that stage who read it.
Almost
no, Gravel was there.
Dennis Kucinich was pretty based. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Christina.
Yeah.
And also, thank you once again, Adi. Disagree with Gavin on Whole Foods. 365 products are still mostly organic and taste much better than the non-365 alternatives. As a vegan, I cannot imagine life without Whole Foods 365 in 2022. Well, that is true, Adi, about the vegan stuff. Like, they definitely have more of a selection for vegans. But I swear to God, because I recently lived right by a Whole Foods, and I swear to God, I slowly but surely started realizing a lot of their products. Like, if you just got like a 365 cheese pizza, for example, like it wasn't organic. Like, it didn't specify that anywhere on the labeling, despite, again, I feel like a lot of people that go in there and buy those products just assume or expect it to be. So I mean, I definitely appreciate where you're coming from, Adi, but if you experienced Whole Foods like 15 years ago, I don't know if you did, even 10 years ago before Amazon bought it up, I think you might know what I'm talking about. Because again, like, there's definitely some good usefulness. Again, vegan, vegetarian alternatives. As a vegetarian, I definitely, go there sometimes to get certain products. There's definitely some good stuff there. But if you had experienced it like 15 years ago, and maybe you did, let me know. But I think, as someone that's been experiencing it since like my childhood, I used to go with my mom because she would like to get certain health foods there. If you compare it now, it's just like a shadow of its former self. So that would be my opinion. But again, I definitely appreciate where you're coming from, Adi.
Yeah, this is like my Gen Z, I think Gavin too, like our little like Zoomer like childhood thing where it's like, okay, maybe this was just our McDonald's all along, but like I remember when I was a kid and like my parents were very like, working class people. They were not Whole Food shoppers in that like mainstream sense, but I remember my mom would take us there and she would like let us pick out like one thing, and like my sister would always get one of their like really ornate like cupcakes or whatever with like chocolates. Now I thought it was like the fanciest fucking shit in the world, and I would always get their pizza. And I know, Gavin, you also have childhood nostalgia for their pizza. That pizza is not the same anymore. It is different. But anyway, yeah, so shout out to you, Adi. I'm finally not the one fucking up your name and then correcting Gavin for doing it right. Yeah, shout out to you. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, it's totally. I mean, I'm not one of these people where it's like, oh, well, if you shop there, you're part of the problem. I mean, I know that a lot of people, it's like that might be the only place you can get certain products and stuff like that, especially if you're a vegan or what have you. So I get it. It just all depends on, like where you're at. I mean, where I live, I can very easily avoid Whole Foods because, like I live in Southern California. It's a very, like densely populated place. So there's farmers markets everywhere, and there's like, just a lot of, I mean, I can't totally avoid the grocery stores, but it's like most of my grocery shopping is for sort of the non-perishables, rice, pasta, stuff like that. And I get a lot of that stuff also at like Costco. So, like I get it if it's like you still get some of the stuff you need at Whole Foods and whatnot. And I don't begrudge it by any means. Like, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, it's I do remember it being slightly better. Well, even like when they had those what was it? They had those like cold food stations. Like, those have really plummeted. They used to have like all kinds of cool like orzo.
Oh, yeah, the salad bar was legendary. That was another thing that went unmentioned.
It's not quite the same, is it? Like I feel like when I saw one more recently, it was sort of like not what I remember. And I'm with you on the pizza. I mean, I had the pizza once a long, long time ago, and I remember really enjoying it. Then I had it more recently, and by more recently, I mean this was still years ago, but I remember having it, and it was just gross. And I'm like, what happened to this place?
Yeah, it used to be like you'd get like a fat slice of pizza, like a huge, like literally like a fourth of a pizza. The pizza slices were like a fourth of the fucking pizza, and they were really good quality. The crust was delicious, and it's still like fine. Like, I'm not opposed to eating it. There's worse pizza, but like now it's a lot. The slices are way smaller. It's a lot like greasier. The crust is a lot thinner. But this has just evolved into us shitting on Whole Foods pizza.
Yeah,
so,
which there's a lot. I mean, I don't know. How does it weigh against Costco pizza? Have you had that?
I like Costco pizza. Costco pizza is a much better deal for one, because you can get a slice for $1.50.
Like
$10 for a 16-inch pizza with pepperoni.
And you get like a pie for $10.
That being said, I do think that Costco pizza has way too much fucking cheese on it. Like, way too much.
That's because
cheese.
you get the cheese only one where they put
I'm
twice
talking
as
about
much
cheese pizza. So that's, yeah, exactly. But they just cake that shit in fucking cheese. Like, I like cheese pizza, but calm down with the fucking amount of cheese you put on there. I think it's like over 2,000 calories for a single cheese pizza.
Well, the only time I've ever had it is like at a like a gathering, like if someone's gonna have a gathering, and I get it because it's like you can get a lot of pizza for like a reasonable price. So it's like, yeah, we're just gonna get Costco pizzas for everyone. So I've never had a like in-store experience where I'm like, I'm gonna get a Costco slice to really round out my shopping time.
You got to go
here.
renegade, Ron. You got to go and get the chicken bake and really fuck some shit up for people and start rolling around with one of those big ass chicken bakes coming out. Look, man, you got to start living like a Midwesterner. I'm talking like some days I'll be like, oh, there's only like 30 minutes until I got to get to the bar. Let me just run into Costco and get a chicken bake. It's $3 and it's probably
No, I feel
10,000
ya.
calories. So like I'm all set.
I feel you, man. Yeah, no, I don't have a Costco like super close to me, like it's driving. So like, yeah, it's never really like where I'm at. Costco's not really on the way to anything. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be like on the way to anywhere I'd be going. But yeah, I feel you. I don't like those types of places just as a consumer. Like they're very big and overwhelming, and like you're kind of just like herded like cattle into the line, and it's sort of
So true. Well, that's one of the other things that is preferable about Whole Foods is that it has like better lighting. It doesn't have that like dismal, like gray aesthetic and linoleum floor vibe. It has a little bit better lighting and like, you just feel like you're in like a slightly like less, you don't just feel like you're in a fucking warehouse with a bunch of other like animals essentially. But also thank you so much, Tony. Really appreciate the super chat. And you said you wanted to submit a super chat, but I don't have the money. Don't worry about that at all, Tony. We
good
really
to see you,
appreciate
Tony. I'll see you in
99.
Chicago.
Oh, is he saying?
I'll see you in Chicago next year, man.
Hey, well, there you go. Really appreciate you though, Tony. And also thank you, Evan, for the $4.99. I shop at the local food co-op. All the organic, local, and alternative foods one could want, and it's less expensive than Whole Foods. Support co-ops. Well, I'm 100% with you, Evan. Obviously, everyone should support co-ops if you're able to, if there's one in the area. And thankfully, luckily for Zach and I, there is one in the area. About 5 minutes. Basically, the grocery store I go to every other day is a little co-op in Kansas City, Kansas, about 5 minutes from where Zach and I live. And it's awesome. Yeah, they have a good selection of food. The workers actually seem like happy there. They'll chat with you and they don't seem like they hate their fucking lives. So it's great. And yeah, I totally agree. Support co-ops where you can.
Yeah, food co-ops rule, man. And I mean, because I still travel all around the country, but I used to travel even more. And it's always interesting the places where you'll find them. Like it's not just, it's not like food co-ops are only in Portland or something like that. Like they're freaking everywhere, man. One of the best food co-ops I've ever been to, ever. Not in LA. It was in South Dakota. There was this food. I want to say it was oh man, what was the town?
Laramie?
It was,
Is
no,
that in
no,
South
no.
Dakota?
That's
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Yeah, I know it's like a super liberal town up there.
What's the towns in South Dakota? It was like one of the main ones.
That's super.
Sioux Falls is in South Dakota, right?
It was Sioux Falls. Yeah, it was Sioux Falls. It was Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
It's the one place in South Dakota I could pull from my brain.
Dude, you nailed it, man. Well, there's a bunch of like in Iowa, there's like Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls, Iowa Falls. Like they're all there. I almost went to the wrong town once for a show because I just was like, is it Cedar Falls or Iowa Falls or what falls / rapids is it? And I literally started driving to the wrong town. I realized it halfway there that I turned around. I got to the gig on time, but I've totally done that before. But
That's
yeah,
something that
man,
the
there was
Vanguard
this
would-
food co-op in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was amazing. They made their own pupusas and they made their own tamales. And they were top-notch stuff, man. And hey, I live in Los Angeles. This was top-notch stuff. And I basically ate there my entire time in Sioux Falls. I was not there very long, admittedly, but like the 2 days I was there, I only ate from that co-op. I just ate everything from that co-op. It was amazing, and I was like, man, this place is impressive. And I was asking people questions, like they're just a locally owned and community run thing, and they've just been there for a long time.
That's how to do it, though, right? You know what I mean? All I was going to say is just like if you have real people that actually really give a shit about this is what we talk about all the time in like the restaurant industry and all that kind of stuff. If you have, real people where this is like their craft, this is what they believe in, this is what they're like setting out to do. Like the people that run that cooperative grocery store. They want to make sure their community is fed. Their community is getting fed because of them, right? If you really take that with pride and you're not just a cog in a machine, you can really do so much with that, because think about it. How valuable is it to your community to be fed? That's something that everybody has to do. So why not give them something, to be like, with love in it, like that's been made with your soul, with your heart. And then, think about how long that stayed with you, Ron. Like, this is probably years ago, right? But you're still thinking about that pupusa and tamale that you ate at the, co-op or whatever. So
I think it was like 2019, so it wasn't that long ago. But yeah, man, I mean, in principle,
3 years is years, man. We still made it by the skin
of
our teeth.
And it's been quite a 3 years. So I mean, yeah, it's only been 3, but I feel like with
aged 7, we all did.
Yeah, the time the world has had, it's been like 6 or 7 years. Yeah, you could double it.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by, Ron. We're probably going to get out of here, but it was a great chat. Always, just have a great time catching up with you, talking shit. So, let everyone know if there's anything you want to plug at the end of the show or where to find you, etc. But yeah, we really appreciate you stopping by.
Well, first of all, please go to antitrustsummer.com. We talked a lot about Amazon. We got to start breaking big tech up, and you can start at antitrustsummer.com. Please sign the petition to have these antitrust policies passed. They don't want to pass it, but if we're so loud they can't ignore us, they're going to have to. So please, antitrustsummer.com. I'll be announcing some 2023 tour dates soon. I'm going to be touring in 2023, and I'm also going to be doing a couple screenings of a short film I finished called Loner. So there's going to be stand-up and screening shows. And I'll probably be doing the UK next year. I'll be doing Iceland next year because I had to cancel my Iceland shows because I got sick. But yeah, so I'll be announcing 23 dates soon. RonPlacone.com, Twitter @RonPlacone. You can catch my show, Get Your News On with Ron. I'm on Status Quo on Thursdays. And yeah, I think that's everything.
Right on, man. Well, thank you as always for coming on. Looking forward to having you back in the hot seat again. It was a great conversation that was wide ranging, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Me too, man. Thanks for having me. Always great seeing you guys.
Take care. Yeah, really, really appreciate it, Ron. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time. Yeah, great conversation with Ron. Love Mr. Placone. Just a great, conversationalist. I feel like just one of the most chill dudes in left indie media.
Yeah, dude. And honestly, I forgot to give him this massive pat on the back, so I'll do it while he's out the door. One of the things I just like about Ron so much is that he's a performer, and he really just fucking does it to perform. It's kind of like what I was talking about with the people that were like, oh, like, what's the value that you can get from just feeding your community, working at your like cooperative grocery store, or like, just doing what you do and then doing it for the people instead of like for this like ethereal like goal of growth or, acclaim or adulation or all that. I mean, he was like, oh, yeah, I wanted to do it. I didn't want anybody to feel like they had to pay me. So I was like, well, let's just tell everybody we'll donate it to, homeless mutual aid group instead. I'm like, what? You just fucking busted your, you know what I mean? Like most people, when they bust their ass off on a creative endeavor, like they look to get at least some sort of like compensation as part of their validation. No, this dude's out here being like, the community response is my fucking, like, I just think that's poetic. That's something that we could all aspire to have a little bit more of in our hearts. So shout out to you, Ron. I really respected.
Absolutely. Such a cool thing to do, donating that money to the homeless population in St. Pedro. So, huge shout out to you, Ron. Looking forward to seeing your new act as Lucian the Satirist. Really cool stuff. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. We always get off topic a little bit with Ron, but I think it's a fun time. And thank you everyone that super chatted again. Really appreciate it, Evan. Really appreciate it, Adi, everyone else that super chatted. We really appreciate that. And to end the show, as always, we do have to shout out the patron community. Huge shout out to everyone supporting us on Patreon. Let me pull up the right one real quick. Yeah.
This is DIY production, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Sorry, guys. But yeah, huge shout out to the patron community. If you guys enjoy the content of our show, the message of our show, etc., please do consider hitting us up on Patreon. The link is in the description. As always, it's a good way to keep us afloat. And again, we hope you guys enjoyed the show today. We hope you guys enjoyed the content. It's all made possible by our patron community and the support they give us. Even just a couple bucks a month really does go a long, long way. So we really appreciate that, especially as Zach and I are now producing our documentary material, our on the road stuff. We just dropped our first Vanguard documentary a couple days ago about Jesse Ventura. So go check that out if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed that and want to see more, please do consider hitting us up on Patreon. Like I said, it really does go a long way as far as keeping us 100% independent, viewer funded, all that good stuff. But mostly just thank you guys all for tuning in today, hitting that like button, all that good stuff. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of you guys. As always, we like to say you make the wheels on our van go round and round. As Gavin was telling you, make sure to watch that Jesse doc if you haven't. We're really proud of it. It's got a lot of good shit in there, and it's the beginning of what is to come. So make sure you go over there, you watch it, you hit the like button, and if you're looking for a good olive branch to give somebody to introduce them to the Vanguard, I would suggest something like that because it's less esoteric. It's less, oh, this person, that person, whatever we have to do to survive the algorithm. It's just, here is our presentation of what we made, and this is the dudes that are behind it. So anyway, appreciate everybody tuning in. Great chat with Ron, and we'll be back. Oh, and congrats to Kyle and Crystal. We didn't talk about that, but I saw a couple of people in the chat bring it up. Of course, massive congratulations to them. I almost tweeted out that this is the only kind of left unity I want to see, but then I was like, oh, well, this is just a bad pun.
That's hilarious. Yeah, huge congrats to Crystal and Kyle. Really heartwarming to see them, find love in each other and all that cool stuff. So very dope.
Also, a big family. I didn't even realize there was a picture of all of them. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I think she had like 3 or 4 kids or something like that before Kyle came into the scene. So yeah, super cool stuff. Huge shout out to them. Huge congratulations. And again, thanks everyone for tuning in today. We really appreciate you choosing to listen and watch the Vanguard when there's so many other options out there competing for your attention. Really, really means a lot that you guys choose us. So thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time, probably tomorrow, if not a little bit later in the week.
Yep. Peace out, guys.